A table that lifts itself, and how to protect your fingers with feathers this week on Blue Collar Woodworking. This big particle board project is really cutting into my shop time. I mean, I really want to show up those lowlifes over there at the Bunyan Brothers mill. And what better way to do it than by taking something they consider useless like particle board and turning it into something relatively nice. But there's other stuff going on around the shop. I can't spend all my time proving how great I am. I have projects to make, finishes to apply. McNugget the shop chicken hasn't had a bath in weeks. I'm really falling behind. So people around here are going to have to start pulling their weight. Well, I guess not Joy, because she weighs like 600 pounds. But everyone else is going to have to. Well, not Randy, because he's pretty much useless. But Chip is going to have to get that wheelchair rolling and start sweeping the floors or something. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start putting in 4 or 5 hour days. And believe me, they don't want that.
The Stumpy Nubs workshop is more than just a place for internet viewers to indulge their woodworking fantasies. It's a thriving small business, turning out small-scale production and custom projects for sale. And as the holiday season approaches, the work begins to pile up.
Joy, who, as you know, takes care of all the businessy stuff around here, she's all over me about this order for some small display cabinets that need to be made. Why aren't you working on them? You never do anything around here. Who stole my Twinkies? It never ends with her. But I'll admit, sometimes she's right. I do need to get busy, and the projects are backing up. Which is why I'm going to build a router table to go with the router lift I made last week. Because then I'll have a router table and lift that I can use to make moldings for those display cabinets. And then she'll just have to shut her mouth.
Last week, the woodworking world was put on notice. The days of expensive router lifts were over with the introduction of Stumpy's homemade ball bearing lift with built-in dust collection. In the days that followed, manufacturers began scrambling to reevaluate the way they do business. But before you could say ingenious, inexpensive innovation, here comes Stumpy with yet another great idea.
Yeah, I already have a rotor table, and so do you. So why would I want to build another one? Well, 2 reasons. First, because I want something compact that I can leave a setup in and put away on a shelf somewhere. Second, because I don't want to sacrifice features for a compact size, which means I want this sucker loaded with features that even some of the expensive commercial versions don't have. Besides the lift I already made, I'm thinking a sliding table for coping and cutting tenons, or dual dust collection below and above with big 4-inch ports that are kind of hard to find on the commercial ones. And I want a fence so nice that I won't even be able to look at my old one without getting sick to my stomach. Think I'm demanding too much out of a homemade router table? Well, that's what they said when I came up with the idea for the wooden time machine. And who's laughing now?
They call it a router table for a simple reason. It's a table with a router in the middle. You wouldn't think there'd be so much you could add to such a basic tool, but there are dozens of commercially available versions, each with its own features and each claiming to offer the best features for the cost. And that cost can be high indeed. Festool's newest entry into the router table market comes with a price tag well above $1,000. But what it lacks in affordability, it attempts to make up for in features, including built-in hold-downs, excellent dust extraction, and a sliding table for precise cutting. These are some of the features Stumpy intends to build into his table without the big price tag.
Because this is going to be a compact design, I can make use of some of the small scraps I've got laying around the shop, which is practically cleaning it up. So suck on that, Joy. Why don't I get started while you check this out? This week I want to show you one of the most important tools in my shop. Without it, this place would be dull. Of course, I'm talking about my electric pencil sharpener. If you want to talk investment versus value, I don't think there's a better deal in this entire shop. You can pick these suckers up at yard sales for like $4 because nobody uses pencils anymore, and it gets used several times a day around here. It always performs flawlessly, it has built-in dust collection, and it can keep even a guy like Randy sharp. How many $4 or $5 tools around your shop can you say all that about? So, if you don't have an electric pencil sharpener in your shop, you really should be asking yourself, what have you done with your life? Oh yeah, baby.
More men killed at Fells Point.
Many router tables feature a rabbeted edge to hold the router plate. Accurate plate installation can sometimes be a challenge, but one of the easiest options requires a few scraps of wood and a few clamps. With your router plate resting where you want it on the tabletop, surround it with a frame of wood scraps. Then, using a short pattern cutting bit, you can cut a groove of the correct depth all the way around. Remove the waste in the center with a saber saw, and you're ready to install your plate. Of course, you can also just freehand route it like Stumpy does, because he's too cheap to buy a short pattern cutting bit.
That up, baby. Oh yeah.
Want to impress your friends? Then just go to stumpynubs.com and click on the tab that says Stumpy Store. There you'll find plans for many of the projects you see on Blue Collar Woodworking, and you can help support the show.
So, this router table is coming along nicely. It's really just a box with a hole in the top for the router lift that we built to fit into. And it's got an open back so that we can get 4-inch dust collection on the router lift itself. And of course we're going to have 4-inch dust collection coming from the top too. Now that the router lift is installed, you can see a little more how it works, which a lot of people were emailing saying I didn't show enough of that in the last episode. On the top of the router plate, there's a 1/2-inch nut that's epoxied to a threaded rod, and that's where your 3/4 inch socket fits. So you can just turn it to raise the router, or turn it to lower the router. And I use this little ratchet, but a quick wrench would work just fine. Whatever you got. I did find that the most important thing in making a router lift is to be sure that the guides, which on these are drawer slides, you can see they're between the pieces here, between the two sides, so this part in the center moves up and down, whereas the sides stay. They have to make the router move perfectly perpendicular to the table, and your router has to be perfectly perpendicular to the table. It's a little bit of a challenge, but with some good planning ahead of time, we put together some SketchUp plans that we're going to have available soon. It's not a problem, and it really works out nice. Now, I'm going to get started on a sliding table for this sucker while you check this out. 99 out of 100 workshop accidents occur at the router table, which is a statistic that I just made up. But the fact remains, a multi-bladed carbide cutter spinning at 1 billion RPM is bound to claim an occasional finger. So you can never have too much safety when it comes to the router table. And I think the most important rule to follow, besides never touching the spinning part, is to use featherboards. Now don't let the light and fluffiness of the name fool you. These things are serious finger savers, and since you can make them yourself, there's no reason you shouldn't have these suckers all over the workshop. Any straight-grained wood will work just fine to make a featherboard, but I prefer something moderately hard like oak or soft maple. The important part is to cut your fingers along the grain rather than across it. And by cut your fingers, I mean the fingers on the featherboard, not your literal fingers. It would kind of defeat the purpose, wouldn't it?
A featherboard is a block of wood or some other material that keeps the workpiece in contact with the bit using a set of flexible fingers. Commonly used on a router table, as well as on a table saw, they are best used in pairs to hold the stock down, as well as prevent it from drifting away from the fence. This combination of lateral and longitudinal pressure not only reduces the risk of injury, it also increases the quality of the cut.
Of course, you're going to want a way to hold them down. On the new router table, I'm going to make a spot where a couple of bolts can go directly into the table and into the fence. But sometimes you just want them to snug up inside your miter track. Well, there's a way you can do that too. And all you need is a couple of flat-headed machine screws and some wing nuts. This is the little doodad we come up with, which tightens inside the miter slot when you tighten the nut on top. Of course, this isn't an idea that we just invented. Featherboards like this one from Harbor Freight have them built right in, made out of plastic. They've been used for a long time with great success. So we can put that right on one of the slots in our featherboard, which will allow us to position it in the slot, adjust back and forth, and tighten it in place, which will lock it forward and back and side to side. We also applied this idea to a neat little jig that is found inside the volume 34, number 201 issue of Woodsmith magazine. And that is this featherboard holder. Now it holds a featherboard to press against the side and to hold down, and everything is all adjustable. The idea that they had was to use those switchable magnets, which are really expensive. So I used those same little slot holders, put a couple on here so that it will fit right in place. You can lock it down, adjust the featherboards and lock them down. It's a nice jig. I think it kind of gets in the way. You know, you'll have to push your push stick underneath it, but it sure would add a lot of safety to your table saw. I can't make plans for it because I didn't design it, but check out Woodsmith magazine.
Find everybody's favorite fat little woodworker on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and read his hilarious weekly woodworking blog at stumpynubs.com.
Well, the router tables are just about done. Notice I said router tables because it always turns out that I get out of control designing something and I end up building more than one with different features because I can't decide on what I really want. Remember, I wanted something that was compact, but I also wanted something with a sliding table and a lot of extra features. Well, that made it not so compact. That's this one here. It's a little big to be lifting around, and I didn't want to sacrifice those extra features. So I made another one that is more compact. Anyway, this is the best one. This sucker has, besides the rotor lift that we already talked about, it has a sliding table on the front. Now, I'm going to have a fence on here and a way to clamp stock to it so that if you want to run stock on end against the bit, like you're coping some trim or making cabinet doors or cutting tenons, oh, it's going to be fantastic for that. It also, of course, is going to have featherboards for extra safety, but I also made bit storage in the front with these slide-out trays, which I'm pretty excited about. A little extra storage room underneath there. And the whole thing runs on a system of drawer slides. That's right, I love these things. They work great for all kinds of projects. So you get smooth operation and it's perfectly flat with the top, which is critical. Now the more compact version doesn't have the sliding table, and that reduces its weight considerably, but it still has the router lift and it still has bit storage in these little pullouts here, and both have underneath, and it's going to eventually have overhead dust collection. Of course, it doesn't have overhead dust collection yet, and the reason is, as you can see, they don't have fences. That's a whole separate project. We're going to start on that next week, and Then we'll wrap up our 3-episode rotor series that we are already 2 episodes into. Everything will be done, and you'll get to see how everything works in more detail. So, stick around. Well, it's been another long day at the Stumpy Nubs workshop, but we've learned a couple things. First of all, we've learned that if you make fun of Joy being heavy, she'll spit in your sandwich. Now, as a frequent eater of fast food, I'm sure I've consumed my share of spit, but Joy chews tobacco. So let me tell you, it was a little hard to finish that sandwich after I saw the brown slime she left in it. But it was liverwurst, so I wasn't going to waste it. Plus, I'm not a quitter, which is why I am so determined to make my workshop the best it can be, no matter how much effort it takes. Let's face it, regular woodworkers like us, we don't have a money tree. And if we did, we cut it down years ago to find out what kind of figure money tree wood has. So we can't always buy all the fancy, expensive tools that we want. Sure, we might have a couple nice tools, but most of us, we have to settle. I mean, I like to eat a lot. And my wife likes her luxuries like clean water and toilet paper. So I have to be satisfied with a few nice tools and dream sometimes about the good ones. But I refuse to accept that it has to be just a dream. I refuse to accept that a sliding table, router table with a precision fence and a router lift is only available to woodworkers who live in mansions and drink beer with the label still on it and eat lobster that doesn't come out of the dumpster behind Long John Silver's. Great shops are the right of every woodworker, just as much as the air we breathe and the internet signal that we piggyback off from the neighbor's house. So I intend to start a revolution that will move the very bowels of the woodworking world. With my build-it-yourself jig and tool designs and slightly better than mediocre woodworking expertise, I hope to lead you into a new world where there's a chicken in every pot, where there's a box joint jig on every bench, a homemade featherboard on every router table, protecting every finger, and where every woodworker can sit back and have a cold one, because we've earned it, my friends.
Are you filming?
Yeah, that's right. Funny.
Want me to do something funny or?